Hello, and welcome to this edition of Secure Networks, the Endace Packet Forensic Files, with your host, Michael Morris. Our special guest this week is Tim Dales, VP of Labs and an analyst for IT Brand Pulse. Tim, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what IT Brand Pulse does?
Sure, I'd be happy to. IT Brand Pulse is basically a trusted source of data analysis and IT infrastructure. About servers, storage, networking. So we're kind of an analyst firm, if you put it that way. Prior to IT Brand Pulse, I was an executive for a high-speed networking vendor called SolarFlare, and I've got over 35 years experience in the development, marketing, and sales of IT infrastructures. So at SolarFlare, we provided support for our customers' packet capture solutions and ended up building a purpose-built solution ourselves. So I've got lots of trials and tribulations on packet solutions. So thought I'd bring that to bear with this particular project.
Well, Tim, again, we appreciate you joining us, and your background is ideal for what we want to talk about. We know you did a recent study, your company did, comparing total cost of ownership of building your own packet capture solution versus purchasing a vendor-built platform. Why do you think so many organizations look at in-house built solutions in the first place?
That's a good question. There's been a lot of success in open systems marketplace for software and systems. So to me, it's not surprising that when an organization is trying to solve a problem, they look to an open source solution. And that's kind of fine for, operating systems like Linux that are pretty mature, or database like MySQL. But a lossless, packet capture system is a whole different problem thing to solve, that requires a lot of expertise. So we thought it would be useful to look at building a packet capture system using an open source sort of point of view and application, so that we could analyze that against a purpose-built solution and hopefully provide our users with some insight into the dilemma that they always have to go through when they have to build versus buy any type of application. So it was kind of pointed at IT pros that kind of go through that dilemma in their mind.
Okay. So can you describe for us a little more detail of what options you looked at specifically?
Sure. From the build perspective, we took the approach of, okay, I'm an IT director of a medium to large size, and I got a pretty good open source competent team, and we've been successful with a couple of DIY projects. So let's get the guys all around the table, and guys and gals, and try and solve a capture packet problem. So where do we? So all the questions start to come up, like where do you store that data? How much storage do you need? How do you access the data? What database we're going to use? Lots and lots of questions come up, when you try and solve this problem. So we thought, hey, we could use the iSCSI disk on the backup server, but there wasn't enough storage there. So we thought, hey, we've got a whole new system on SAN for our SAP ERP application. Maybe we can use that. But after we did the analysis of the kind of IOP load that we'd be putting on the RAID array, it came pretty evident very quickly that we crushed the performance of the ERP system, capturing all those packets.
Right.
So we ended up with a dedicated build of a server and storage, and found an open systems product that's fairly popular in the marketplace called Akamai, which is a index packet capture and search tool. So from the build option, we decided to use Akamai, and they've got a lot of good tools out there, YouTube videos, things like that. And they've got some real specific instructions on their website with some calculators, so you can size the servers and the storage required and all that sort of stuff. So it was pretty prescriptive from that point of view. And then on the build side, we looked at the Endace Pro platform. At my last job at SolarFlare, we competed with them head to head a lot of times, and they've got a very good product. So we like that it's purpose built, it can easily be stacked so that it's scalable, and it can be managed as a network-wide fabric. And they've got a dedicated team of engineers and support personnel. It's a mature application, and they've got a lot of good ecosystem partners. So it made sense to kind of find somebody that had a really complete solution.
Right. So Tim, tell us, what were some of the findings of your report, and what would you recommend to anyone looking at adding packet capture to their security stack in the first place?
Well, first of all, it was kind of funny as we got into this thing. It was like building your own solution and making it scalable enough to be always on.
Right.
For all the packet capture is a lot more complex than I think any of us realized when we got into it. After going through the build process, it's a lot more difficult to just it's a lot more difficult than just getting some hardware and slapping some software together. You need to think about how you can manage multiple capture points on the network, how you upgrade those platforms, how do you check that they're operating correctly and not missing traffic or dropping packets? How do you dedupe traffic from multiple points, and how and where to store the large amount of data? We had to find a repository, build a particular system to support the IOP rate, to keep the disks going without lag. It's kind of useless if you have a petabyte of recorded data it's in a store somewhere and your team can't get to it. So you have to think of all the operational aspects too. Okay, so how do you make that data available to your DevOps team or your security team so that they can investigate a particular cyber attack? So it looked like a simple exercise, but then as you kind of delve into it, you think about all the network traffic and dropping of packets and the sorts of speeds the networks are running at today. So you got to select hardware that can capture packets, write them to disk at very high speed, and then index that data without lag. So I don't know. I'm just touching the surface. There were a lot of things that come to mind as you start to get into the quagmire of building this thing. But the biggie to me was it needs to be reliable too. You don't want a critical source or resource like that, to be offline, during a critical moment or an attack or something like that. And at the end of the day, I had this epiphany that okay, so I built this system, okay, and I hope to God that it's better than the one that I could have purchased. Where I've spent all this time and energy and effort, okay, whereas I just could have given somebody some money and got it 2 weeks later and been up and running. So that was a biggie for me.
Yeah, no, it's always the overhead that people don't think about in any in-house, whether it's packet capture or anything, right? So Tim, have you?
And what we discovered also was that, you're going to take a team and you're going to have them develop this app. And then what happens if you lose a guy, or you got a young guy on the project and he's career oriented and he wants to go and work someplace else in the organization. Right. So you lose that resource, so there's a lot of things that you kind of think about when you're doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So have you seen changes in the way people are architecting their networks to address cyber threats, and also in response to changes in the way people are working? I mean, obviously, we're doing this over a Zoom call. With everything with COVID and the remote workforce. What are changes you're really seeing and experiencing?
The whole work and learn from home movement around COVID is putting these huge strains on IT infrastructures and really driving the demand for network access, and in my mind, exposing a lot more endpoints to an organization's IT security perimeter that they never thought about. So there's all these new demands for IP access, from all these work at home folks, and that's created huge gaps in the network security. But let me give you an example. Look at the latest cyber attack on T-Mobile, which was exposed personal information. I think it was 54 million customers. Right. What was interesting to me was the hacker, bold as they were, gave an interview to Wall Street Journal and said, mobile's unprotected routers and weak spots in their company's internet address spaces gave them access to over 100 servers. So it's like, okay. So I think that, clearly points that it's real important to check and recheck your security perimeter, your architecture, and in my mind, continually capture all network packet data so you can detect those intruders.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I've heard people refer to it as the attack surface has exponentially exploded with.
Yes.
Now it's basically my home network is part of the corporate network to some aspect, right? It's vulnerability points. So Tim, based on the changes in the architecture you just described, what are you seeing in terms of the importance of tool integration? And how does that tie back to this whole build versus buy conversation for whatever platform it may be?
Well, in my mind, cybersecurity is still the number one reason to have continuous, full packet capture, along with the tools to decode and make sense of those packets, when an incident occurs. So a complete copy of your network traffic shows the full extent of any breach, whereas system logs and other evidence can often be, wiped by a hacker. Packet capture cannot be wiped. So it's the clearest, they provide you with the clearest evidence of any attack or threat in your organization. And I love the fact that third parties such as Cisco, IBM, Darktrace all have great tools that, when integrated to your packet capture appliance, can provide valuable insights. So having these products integrated into your packet capture environment, to me, is pretty paramount.
Yeah, no, it's we get a lot of positive feedback from customers around that, right? Being able to get to it in the workflows they're doing. So let's talk about how this connects, because many tools in the cybersecurity space really focus on metadata, right? And so there's this whole debate about metadata versus full packet data and the trade-offs, right? There's obviously trade-offs in terms of volume and storage. And what are you seeing in this area in particular?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. So as I understand it, delivering full visibility across a complex IT infrastructure is not an easy task. And the amount of network data is growing exponentially. So, you've got those two working against each other. So it's a challenge to pinpoint what the actual problem is whenever there needs to be some network analysis involved. And the network teams, pulling their hair out, trying to find a quick and easy way to troubleshoot a problem. So they're using, NetFlow or metadata methods instead of full packet capture to kind of get the job done. And that's okay. These methods can be effective, in some solutions, in some situations, okay? But at the end of the day, some problems can only be solved, by deep packet inspection and full capture of packet data.
No, absolutely. Tim, your insights have been incredible. One of the things I always like to ask our guests is be a little bit of a cybersecurity forecaster for us. So what's one thing you recommend to our listeners that they really start thinking about or look out for over the next 6 to 18 months as this ever-shifting battle for cybersecurity continues?
Well, as I look into my crystal ball,
yes.
The one thing I believe they should be thinking about is, how they can continuously capture packet data in your environment. And maybe you take, subsections or segments of your network and you do that, put that on your e-commerce system initially or whatever. But, they need to consider that, put it in your budget, figure out how they can do it. And what's telling is that we recently did an IT brand whole survey of IT pros, and less than 20% were recording full packet data continuously. Whereas 65% of the IT shops that were recording full packet data found it very useful to critical to their operations. So let's not be the next headline, okay? And capture packets continuously. I think it's the message.
No, Tim, your insights have been just tremendous, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise and the data you found. We'd ask our listeners to tune in next time for another edition of the Endace Packet Forensic Files. For more information about Endace's network packet capture platform and our integrations with our Fusion technology partners, please go to endace.com. Tim, again, thanks for taking a little bit of time with us. Thanks for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a great day.